For a text today, we read from the 4th chapter of St. Matthew's Gospel, beginning with verse 1. Then was Jesus led up of the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted of the devil. And when he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he was afterwards and hungered. And when the tempter came to him, he said, If thou be the Son of God, command these stones to be made bread. But he answered and said unto him, It is written, Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. Then the devil taketh him up into the holy city, and sitteth him on the pinnacle of the temple, and saith unto him, If thou be the Son of God, cast thyself down. For it is written, He will give his angels charge concerning thee, and in their hands shall they bear thee up, lest at any time thou dash thy foot against a stone. Jesus said unto him, It is written, Thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. Again the devil taketh him up into an exceeding high mountain, and showeth him all the kingdoms of the world, and the glory of them, and saith unto him, All these things will I give thee, if thou wilt fall down and worship me. Then Jesus said unto him, Get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, Thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve. Then the devil leaveth him, and behold, angels came and ministered unto him. We're following today onto the temptations of Jesus the King in the Gospel of Matthew. We will not rehearse what we said last week, but we'll start with verse 25, where Jesus is taken up into a high mountain. But before we get into that, there is something here we need to talk about. What was going on here physically? Was Jesus really grabbed by the devil and carried up to the top of the temple in Jerusalem? If you had been in Jerusalem that day and had looked up to the pinnacle of the temple, would you have been able to see Jesus sitting up there? Would you have been able to see the devil up there? And to what great and high mountain did Satan carry Jesus? Where is that mountain in this earth where one can see all the kingdoms of this world in a moment of time? Even on a perfectly clear day where the visibility was the best possible, from what mountaintop could Jesus have seen Greece, Spain, Germany, Italy, Asia Minor, and all of Asia? And how could he literally see into and comprehend all the glory of those kingdoms in a moment of time from his far-off mountaintop? Clearly, we are dealing with the supernormal and the supernatural here. Now, I do not ever wish to reason away the reality of the Bible, but there are obvious times when the literal is not intended. It seems to me that this is such a time. I personally doubt that Satan physically laid hold of Jesus and transported him long distances through the air to these various places. These places are used to tell us, in terms that we can understand, what temptations Jesus went through. He was baited by the devil with this temptation to deliberately subject himself to mortal danger to prove his faith in the ability of God to protect him. Now Satan brings all the power and glory of the world before Jesus in a moment of time, even faster than it could be done today on a television special. It would take TV more than a moment of time to display all of these marvelous things in their fullness. Satan, who has supernatural power, was using the supernatural to coincide with the supernatural abilities of Jesus to comprehend all that Satan was claiming that he had power over and was offering to Jesus. I personally doubt that Jesus left the place in the wilderness where he was standing or sitting. I believe that all of this took place in the supernatural realm. What Satan was showing Jesus was real in the natural realm, but the way in which Satan was showing it was not. Well, that's what I believe. You're at liberty to believe, of course, what you wish and to see it differently if you want to. Did Satan really have control over all the kingdoms and wealth of this world? And was he telling the truth to Jesus when he said that they were his to give to whomsoever he wished? Now, this has always been a difficult issue for Bible teachers. The materialism of our age encourages many theologians to believe that Satan did not have control over all these good things. Well, I'll not spend much time on trying to resolve it, but I will give you a little of what Historic Orthodox Christianity believes about this. In 2 Corinthians chapter 4 and verses 3 and 4 it is written, "But if our gospel be hid, it is hid to them that are lost, in whom the God of this world hath blinded the minds of them which believe not, lest the light of the glorious gospel of Christ, who is the image of God, should shine unto them." In this passage, Satan is called the god of this world. In Ephesians 2:2, we are told that Satan is the prince of the power of the air. In Revelation 13, verses 16 and 17, we are told that Satan has power to refuse to let anyone buy or sell if that person will not receive the mark, the number, and the name of the beast. This symbolic passage certainly does not mean what many think it means, but it does make the point that Satan controls the commerce of this world. This is further attested to when we are told in Revelation 12, verse 3, that the seven-headed dragon has 10 horns, which means universal power, and 7 crowns, which means complete rulership over the nations of the world. Well, it is not until his crucifixion is set, Jesus tells Pilate that his kingdom is no longer of this world, and his servants will not fight over it. Well, that is in St. John's Gospel, chapter 18, verse 36. There is a cause and effect in the John 18:36 passage, and we'll talk about it when we get to it. But all of these scriptures combine to say that Satan has control over the commerce, wealth, and power of this world. Well, of course, he could not have it if God had not given it to him, but God did give it to him. In Ezekiel chapter 28, verses 14 through 16, we read, "Thou art the anointed cherub that covereth, and I have set thee so. Thou wast upon the holy mountain of God. Thou hast walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. Thou wast perfect in thy ways from the day that thou wast created, till iniquity was found in thee. By the multitude of thy merchandise they have filled the midst of thee with violence, and thou hast sinned. Therefore I will cast thee as profane out of the mountain of God, and I will destroy thee, O covering cherub, from the midst of the stones of fire." These verses may tell us that Satan had control over making and dispersing wealth before the world was created. In any case, there is an objective reason to believe that Satan did control the wealth and the glory of the kingdoms of this world. And then there's a subjective reason here. If Satan did not have this power, if this was a scam on which he could not have produced, it takes from the meaning of it. Jesus was not unaware of reality. If Satan were lying, Jesus knew it. And then where was the reality of the temptation? Well, that is inductive reasoning, I admit, and for that reason it may not be true, but that is how it seems to me. Logically, if the temptation were not real, it was not anything of consequence. Now I realize that you and I can be lied to and induced to believe that something is real when it is not, but I do not believe that that was true of Jesus. I believe that Satan could have delivered the temporal, mortal benefits that he was promising. But why, if the blessings were unfulfilling, temporal, and part of the fallen world of vanity, would they have tempted Jesus? The answer lies in the fact that he came to be a king in this earth and over the nation of Israel if they could have and would have accepted his kingdom and his rule. Remember that time and history is real. Jesus really wanted them to do that. In his lament over the city of Jerusalem, that is firmly established. If you had only known what I wanted to give you and would have given you, he said, how oft would I have given all of this unto you, but you did not want it. And we will get into that later when we come to the passage. If Jesus had possessed all power and all control over everything that was going on in this world, then to the worldly and humanistic way of thinking, it would have been a breeze to bring in his rule and set it up and control it. It would have been the short and easy way to make it happen. Remember that the temptation in Matthew was to Jesus, the King of the Jews, and the issue was one of kingship and rulership. Well, there is language here that differs slightly from the account in St. Luke's Gospel. In Luke it says in chapter 4, verses 5 through 7, And the devil taketh him up into a high mountain, and showeth him all the kingdoms of the world in a moment of time. And the devil saith unto him, All this power will I give thee, and the glory of them, for that is delivered unto me, and to whomsoever I will give it. If therefore thou wilt worship me, all shall be thine. In St. Luke's Gospel, the temptation is to the man about achievement, possessions, fame, success. But in Matthew, it is to the king about royalty, kingly glory, and the order of the court. In Matthew, he showed Jesus the glory of those kingdoms, and he required that Jesus, the great king, fall down before Satan, pay homage to him, and recognize that Jesus got his power from and owed gratitude to Satan, the god of this world. In Isaiah 14, verses 12 through 14, we read, How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which did weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will also sit upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. The mighty Lucifer, the greatest and most marvelous angelic being God ever created, the son of the morning, had succumbed to the temptation to compete with God for his glory and rule and try to sit in his seat. Satan thought that he could bring Jesus down with the same temptation that had been his own undoing. But there was a major difference. Satan was a mighty created being. If Jesus had been a created being, the story would have had a sad ending. But he was not a created being, as the Jehovah's Witnesses, deists, Unitarians, Baha'is, Rosicrucians, and other pseudo-Christian cults from the theological school of the 2nd century heretic Arius like to claim. Jesus was the incarnate God, the Son of Man, the seed of the woman, born to God, not created by him. Jesus wanted his earthly ministry as King of the Jews to succeed, as we said, and he wanted them to accept him. But if he had to worship anyone but God to make it happen, and if he had to do it any other way than God's way, it would not succeed. It would not be of enduring value, even if it did succeed temporarily, and Jesus would have forfeited the blessings of God and the eternal future. The world was going to reject him if he pursued his course. But if he did it right and stayed in the will of God, the effort would result in eternal victory and glory. Thank God, indeed, praise God. He would not fall for it. He replied in verse 10, "Get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, Thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve." Remember now that this was coming from a weak and starving man who had already endured 30 years of rejection and was now faced with the very real prospect that he would die in the wilderness and never get the opportunity to even try to succeed in his mission as King of the Jews. He had followed the Spirit into the wilderness, expecting something great to happen out there to equip him for the task. What he got instead was 40 days with the dangerous animals, and death by starvation was now setting in. He was being promised by Satan great and glorious success. What did Jesus have to lose? But he had everything to lose, as did Adam's children, whom he came to save. The great thing that Jesus had anticipated when he followed the leading of the Spirit in the wilderness was coming to pass, but it was packaged in such a way that only those who walked by faith in God and not by sight could or would endure to the receiving of it. Jesus persevered, even in the face of what looked like sure defeat. For Jesus, God had to be right, and there was no other course but to follow him. As Job had said so long ago, "Though he slay me, yet will I trust him." Jesus ordered Satan to get out of his face and leave him alone with that kind of stuff. At that rebuke and command, Satan had to leave. When Christ rejected the temptation and rebuked the devil, the divine help that was waiting in the wings came to his aid. Would Jesus the man have died without the ministry of the angels? Well, who can say for sure, since it did not happen, but I believe so. He was starving to death, and he did not have the strength to get back to town where there was food. Now, this was not the last time that Jesus the man did not have the strength to do something. He needed help because he could not carry his cross to the top of Mount Calvary. When are you going to get it through your head that time and history is real? This was not a game that was being played in the wilderness temptations. I believe that without the angels' help, Jesus would have starved to death and died in the wilderness. But that was not going to happen. God had his eye and his hand on Jesus. He was waiting for the temptations which had to take place to resolve the issue of who Jesus, the King of the Jews, was going to worship and from whom he was going to get his power and instruction to end. The redemption of the world hung in the balance, and there was no point in going forward with the plan, and no avenue of going forward with it, if Jesus had made the wrong decision. Nor would Jesus the man in Luke fall for the prospect of possession, fame, and great mortal achievement. It all came before Jesus the man and the seed of the woman in a moment of time. This means that he had a full understanding of the earthly privilege, fame, and glory of possessing it all. Satan only had one chance with Jesus on this at the beginning of his ministry, and Satan wanted him to get the whole picture and feel the full impact of the package he was offering Jesus. Satan did not show Jesus the man, the seed of the woman, the glory of it in St. Luke's Gospel, because ordinary men are not so much concerned with the glory of rulership. Many of them do not want responsibility. They're interested in possession, fame, and privilege. Jesus was a man, tempted in all points, like as we are. If you do not know that he felt the strong appeal of this fabulous offer, then you do not understand what was going on here. But Jesus also knew that God alone was to be worshipped, and that anything obtained without God's blessing and outside of his intimate fellowship was part of the passing world, fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil that would lead to death, from which there was no resurrection. As St. Luke saw and recorded it, Satan did not require Jesus to fall down before him and bow before him in order to have these things. The emphasis was different with the man, the seed of the woman, than it was with Christ the King. In appealing to that aspect of Jesus' mission, Satan wanted to corrupt Jesus with worldly concerns, as Satan himself had been corrupted in the scriptures we just read from Ezekiel and from Isaiah, but it did not work. Jesus, the perfect man, would not fall for the lie as the first Adam, the creature, had. In Luke, with the man, the battle had only begun. Satan would try again and again to appeal to Jesus' humanity and his need for recognition, achievement, acceptance, and security. Why does it say in Mark that the Spirit drove him into the wilderness, when in Matthew and Luke it says he was led by the Spirit? Why are the three temptations not repeated in Mark? Why is Mark's account so different from the other two? Are there reasons for this? There are, and that is what we will talk about next time, if the Lord is willing.
Read more at godspointofview.com. A copy of this book is available from Amazon in Kindle and paperback format. Link in the description.